Hello comrades, classes and factories. There are a lot of MVC frameworks and all of them have some difficulties, some of them not, and in the final analysis everything comes down to the development of some very good website that has some forms, some following things, and as the result we have something just for the sole reason that it's a must. If you are developing some really good game, then without ORP you can't build any architecture. We are going to analyze some points. First, you have to build a lot of objects. It's simple. We have about 50 or 60 objects and statistic map. If we will analyze, then we can make out objects and statistic map, but we are going to analyze it later. This is the complex example. We have about 150 or 200 objects. Besides the map consists of the objects, it's a dynamic map. Analyzing this, in the case if we need to save and load it, then we have to dismantle all objects throughout the map and then to link up it to make it work. According to the books and all references, the extending means that we have a function or activity and we need to write prototypes for it. All scientific books say that the extending of the prototypes means the process of such kind of things. For example, we have a lot of objects. In Minecraft everything is the same, but in the case when we have some trees, tanks, chairs and everything is different, then according to the some classic scheme we have a lot of classes that are difficult to reuse and to join to each other. And if, for example, one class are extending from another one, then it's such a mess. And even if we split it into many files, it's too difficult. What should we do in this case? The solution is to use the factories. Please, raise your hands who have ever heard something about factories. That's good. For those who have never heard what does the factories mean, then it's the place when you can go and ask to make a chair for you, and then the classes make a chair and give it to you. For example, you can go to another one and ask for the table and it gives it to you. With factories it's the same. You go to the same place, ask the factory to create for you a tank, the factory goes to the classes, find the class who creates the tank and deliver it to you. Or you can ask the factory for a building. The factory goes to find the class who creates it and delivers the building to you. In any cases, you just go to the same place. To make it easier, we can ask the factory to create something to us by making the list of the data and the list of the prototypes. For example, when you go to the factory, you have a configuration and it says that the factory has to extend 5 data and 4 prototypes. Factory is extending them and you receive the answer. How does it look like in the code? Above, we have the list of the data, below the list of prototypes. In this case, we create a car and only one prototype was extended. What does the factory do in this case? It links more data and the list of prototypes. The list of the data and prototypes is better to form the JSON of the object and it's easier to look through, to change, but the most important things is still to come. We can mix. We have the same factory. For example, we can do not write the classes. For example, we need a car to make the tank. In the case, if we will write everything correctly and then at the factory we need to find the prototypes of the transport and add it to the prototypes of the weapon. We had just a car, but then it had become the car with the weapon. We had replaced the textures and got the tank. In this ways, rolling up the data, we can get a number of the objects that we don't write any codes for. We just roll up the data for the different objects in a different way. For example, we have a gun and it has a data with prototypes that can be used some other data of the gun. Or, for example, we have a tree and it hasn't any prototypes, just data. For example, the gun and the tree have the above list of the data is the same and from the same place. There is no need to write the classes for the gun and for the tree as well. We just go to the factory and ask for the appropriate list of the data. In addition, if you have those lists, then you can record it easily and make some distributions of DSRS or non-DSRS in general, everything you want. Due to what you have something in JSON or the objects that are similar to JSON, it's easier to parse it. The example of the bad and good codes. On the left, we have an example of the bad code. As usual, we go to the class and ask for the brick.
Но когда приходим на фабрику, она просто достает нам сразу нужное трение для заказанного кирпича. И нам не надо как бы, ну, у нас и кода меньше.
As a bad example, we had written a lot of functions that have the same data, it's wrong. Good example is, we have a bonus.
В варианте написали кучу функций, которые по сути наследуют все те же свойства. Такого быть не должно.
That was received, and in the case when we write it as a JSON, then it's easier to record. Such kind of documentation is easier to record, to pass, to look through, and etc. According to the books, to record the documentation is very hard.
Классики пишут классы во всех книгах. Документацию писать очень трудно, ее надо писать отдельно.
It must be written separately. They use a lot of things to record the document. Usually it's written in the classes and it's too problematic. For example, we have created a world and it's good. Now we have two problems to solve. We need to save and load it. How do we load it? We have a JSON, we write JSON to the line and then we can send it to the server or save it in the storage. But we have some problems. The first problem is the link's redundancy, that usually is skipped. For example, the same object can be used with the different modules. We have to remove those links and put it separately. In this case, to write a registry and save all objects there. For example, in the case if some modules, short-changing, physics, camera or display want to use any objects, then it goes to this registry and using ID asking for that object. It works with it and then deletes all links. There should be any links in this system. Otherwise, we will not be able to use and save those objects. For example, we have two examples. First, when the robot takes the coin. In a bad way, we have a file. In this case, it's the backpack. And we put a coin there. It's bad. Later, when we will record this file in the line, it would be too difficult. And in the case when the coin also has any attachments, it becomes too long process. In a good example, when the robot will take the coin, in his case, in his backpack will be only the ID of the coin. When we will put it in the reserve order, there we would see that he had things with that ID and we lost it and we don't have this ID. When in this case robot will have a 0 in his backpack and the system will not be connected. The second problem of the attachment of two objects is when the person gets in the car. As a bad example, the car has file on the passenger and it puts it into the car, it's bad. As a good example, the car has a file, but it puts there just the ID. It's an ID that there is someone in the car. In the case if we will need the passenger, we will use the registry to find it. It's a big advantage that there won't be any memory leaks. The usage of the memory will reduce because there will be less activities. What should we do with the prototypes? I am asking because when we will record all objects in one line, then the prototypes will disappear. That's why we have to write down all prototypes to each other. We can receive the list as a link and save it.
Список мы можем получить в виде строки и его сохранить.
This is the bad example, it's a tree. The tree didn't have any prototype, but in the case if the tree will have any prototypes, then there will be the names of those prototypes that have to be extended to the tree. Then we wrote everything in the line and want to open our world. Then we open all the objects and send them the factory. Then after checking the list of the prototypes, the factory will assign to each object and the whole list of prototypes. In this case, we have complex objects that will have the most number of the prototypes, so we can save them. After we can restore them back according to the list.
Тогда у нас есть сложные объекты, у которых может быть там огромное количество прототипов навешано, и мы их не потеряем. Мы их после сохранения сможем восстановить обратно по списку.
Conclusion. Don't try the classes. In the case if you have a lot of objects, for example 100, 150 or 200, it's better to write the factories and use the configuration of those factories. Because the configuration is the same JSON and you can combine them and create a lot of objects. You should better to save everything using the list. It's easier to record, to save, to transfer and use them in any processes. Don't let the objects have any connections and any attachments. The worst thing is the attachment of one object to another one and one link of one object to another one, because it's too difficult to save it, to save all prototypes when you want to restore any list. When you will load it to the line and develop the object again, and according to this list you can extend all prototypes.
Круто, круто. Так просто еще никто о фабриках не рассказывал. Вопросы? О, сейчас.
Привет. У меня такой вопрос. Я как понял, по докладу у тебя, получается, все объекты одномерные, то есть у тебя нет такой сложной архетической структуры наследования, как физический объект, какой-нибудь шарик, который наследуется от физического объекта, кубик, который наследуется от физического объекта. У тебя, получается, фабрика порождает большое количество объектов, которыми ксинами вставляются одни и те же методы.
Физику добавь, там обязательно ускорение должно быть, какие-то координаты. Там на самом деле, если откликать, вот пример. Тут на самом деле, если развернуть, могут такие очень большие выпадать объекты внутри, но они не наследуются, они у всех одинаковые. Кстати, еще один момент, который забыл. Как узнать, правильно отработала фабрика или нет? Снять снапшот, посмотреть адреса в памяти. Если фабрика отработала плохо, ну, то есть, если хорошо отработало, у вас адреса свойств разные, адреса прототипов одни и те же. Если она у вас отработала плохо, у вас адреса прототипов будут отличаться, и тогда вы сожрете всю память просто за секунду.
Да, понял, спасибо.
Еще вопросы? Вопросы? Да ладно, это же фабрики. Это же сложно и непонятно. Окей, спасибо большое. Все-таки есть вопрос.
Так я не понял про переопределение. Не может быть, я так понимаю, нескольких прототипов с одинаковыми свойствами, потому что, я не знаю, мне сейчас в голову никакой пример не приходит, но при определении списка прототипов ты никак не задаешь их порядок, если я...
Никак не задаем, мне порядок не имеет значения, например...
И в таком случае у всех объектов, которые являются прототипами, не может быть пересекающихся свойств и методов.
Почему? Ну, свойства пересекающиеся, например, сила, нет, сила это не годится.
Я не знаю, масса, например.
Масса это у нас физика. Физика, вот она, вещь, масса 50. Вот у нас дерево, вот у него тоже 50. Ну, они пересеклись, а прототипы у них не совпали.
А такие элементарные свойства задаются просто через конфиг, который приходит на фабрику.
Да. Нет, в конфиге просто указывается, что унаследуем все, что связано с физикой. И там какой-то большой пакет, вот все, что связано с физикой, координаты, ускорения, всем объектам он вставляется.
А как следить в таком случае за именованием методов, которые должны быть уникальными в пределах вот этого модуля физика, жидкость, тип и так далее?
В пределах модуля, вот вы когда в список, вот тот список, который конфиг для самой фабрики большой.
Я про методы сейчас спрашиваю.
Методы никак.
Хорошо. И так, просто уточнение, все объекты хранятся в реестре, и у них сквозная нумерация, правильно?
Нет, у них айдишники. Ну, в моем случае там
айдишники сквозным образом идут, и машины, и человек имеют разные айдишники.
Да, разные айдишники, и они не могут совпадать. Потому что если айдишники совпадут, то это все. Ну, на самом деле в REST один объект перезакрывает другой объект. Но как бы там хэшки такие длинные.
Все? Или еще один вопрос? Окей, спасибо большое.